Many horses that struggle to adapt to spring grazing do not show right away dramatic signs. Instead, they show subtle changes that are often easily missed. Among these signs, you can differentiate between three categories: digestive signs, movement related signs, and behavioral signs. They all have the same thing in common. They're early indicators that your horse is at increased risk for some serious health complications, which include laminitis and in some cases also digestive disturbances such as colic. The first category is digestive signs. They're often the most obvious ones, such as loose manure, fecal water, and also a bloated appearance due to excess gas formation. What happens when a horse starts grazing on this lush spring pasture is that it starts to eat a lot of what we call non-structural carbohydrates. That's, in simple terms, sugars. And normally they should be digested in the small intestine. But when the horse's body is not yet used to it, a large amount of these can actually reach the hindgut undigested. And there they can create chaos in the gut microbiome. No, the gut microbiome is the most important part of the horse's digestive system. It needs to be balanced for the horse to stay healthy. And when it becomes unbalanced, what happens is that harmful bacteria and other microbes start to proliferate, and they produce lactic acid. The lactic acid is a bad guy because it lowers the pH of the gut, and that damages the gut mucosa. Normally, the gut mucosa is an incredible barrier that protects the horses from toxins that might be in the hindgut because it doesn't allow them to cross into the bloodstream. Instead, they are excreted. But when that barrier is damaged, it no longer functions. And so these toxins all of a sudden cross into the bloodstream. And that's when you can start seeing systemic changes, namely inflammatory changes that also affect the sensitive lamina of the hooves. And that's why when you have an imbalance in the gut microbiome, there's an increased risk for laminitis, and not only an increased risk for digestive disturbances such as colic. The second category of warning signs are movement related. Some of them are clearly early indicators that the lamina of the hooves are inflamed to a certain degree, and so they can be early indicators of laminitis. It must be taken incredibly serious. While other movement related signs actually indicate digestive discomfort. Let me explain. Among these signs, what you can observe would be a little bit of a stiff gait, a shortened stride, sensitivity when the horse tries to move on hard ground, reluctance to turn. You also might be able to feel an increased temperature in the hooves themselves, or also have an increased digital pulse. All of these are clear signs that something is going on in the hooves and are screaming this could be the beginning of laminitis, so you got to act right away. Other movement-related signs can be, as I mentioned, due to digestive discomfort, and this becomes especially relevant when the horse tries to canter, because during cantering, the horse needs to engage the abdominal muscles. And if the horse is suffering from a little bit of excessive gas and therefore is a little bit bloated, if you have to engage the abdominal muscles when you feel bloated, you can imagine how uncomfortable that is. And therefore, these horses might have trouble cantering properly. So if you observe difficulty in cantering when you are getting your horse used to spring grazing, this is something that you should be thinking about as well. The third category of signs are behavioral signs. And there you can have both extremes. On the one hand, you might have horses that become much more reactive, very high strung, very high energy, very explosive. On the other hand, you can also have horses that become tired, listless, almost a little bit lethargic at moments, particularly after bouts of grazing. And if you observe any of these behavioral changes while you're getting your horse used to spring grazing, it is always worth paying attention to. They might be linked to the fluctuations that horses experience in blood glucose and insulin levels linked to the high content of non-structural carbohydrates in lush spring grass. If you notice any of these signs, It's very important that you act promptly, never take the wait and see approach. Instead, the first step should be to contact your veterinarian and discuss what you're observing. Then, based on that, your veterinarian might decide to do a clinical examination and also evaluate past history of your horse, and then decide about a management plan that is suitable for your horse at that specific moment. The key point is that any of these early signs indicate that your horse is not coping well with the introduction to spring grazing, and that adjustments are very much necessary in order to protect your horse from complications.
If you found this information helpful, I've also put together a printable reference sheet for the early warning signs discussed in this video, so you can quickly go back and review them whenever you need to. Click on the link below to access it. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to my channel.